Hi, this is Mani at PicOS Solution Engineering. This video, we will be talking about secured wired access for access point endpoints. We will be using ISE. So the thing that is different in this video than other videos, we will use download ACLs instead of dynamic ACL. So what is the difference? Dynamic ACLs, you define the ACL in PicOS and push the name of the ACL from ISE. That is how dynamic ACL works. The way download ACL works, you define the ACL from ISE and download it. So nothing is defined in the PicOS. Everything comes from ISE. So that's the difference. So we are going to use that for access point. So let us get started. So to do this secured access, it falls into these four major steps. We will be configuring access policy on ISE for the access point that we talked about. Then we will make sure a Vlan is created. Then we'll be testing wired access. Then we will verify, access point secured wired access. Okay, so the first one, configuring ISE. But before I jump in, I kind of want to show the topology. You see here the access point is connected to port 24. Actually, this is wrong. Port 25. That's what we'll be using. Okay. So let me go here. Yeah, port 25 is what we will be using. Okay. So first one is create endpoint identity group for access points. So let me show you how to do that. On the ISE, you go to groups, and since this is going to be an endpoint identity groups, not user related, we will be doing MAB authentication. So that falls under endpoint, whereas 802.1x falls under user identity. So we need to create an endpoint identity group. We are going to call it download ACL map. So you press plus and then just enter a name. So this is what we added. And then you click add and then select the ACL MAC and then you will save it. So this is how you create ACL group with a bunch of access points. So step number 2 in ISE configuration, create authorization profile for assigning Vlan 10. So let us see how we do it. So from policy, you go to results, authorization profiles. So we created one called PicOS map Vlan profile that here you put access accept, and then we are going to push Vlan 10 from ISE for that port where endpoint is connected. So it's Vlan 10, and you will click submit. So this is the Vlan 1. Next, we need to create an authorization policy for downloadable ACL. So let me show you how to do that. You come here and then click plus to create a new authorization profile for using downloadable ACL. So you will enter a name and a description, access accept, PicOS. And if you see here, I have not filled anything on the common task. You have to do this under advanced attribute setting. So the first parameter is PicOS IP downloadable ACL, ACL name. That's what you will select. And then here I'm giving it a name called MAC auth policy 3. The second one is the rules. So in a ACL, there will be specific rule and then what the action. Since we are going to allow everything, I created one rule called sequence 999, then action forward. Basically, you will be adding as many rules, ACL rule as possible. The first line will be, defining the ACL, and the second line will be the action for that ACL, and of course the sequence will be the same for both, right? Just for simplicity, I created just one line, but you will be creating multiple lines for each sequence. Like, say for sequence 1, you will allow a specific, let us say IP or a network. Then you will add another line, say sequence 1, then action, discard or forward. So each rule you will have 2 lines, and since this is allow all, there is only 1 line. Then you will click submit to save the authorization policy. So this is the first, second part that we created. We created authorization profile for Vlan. Then we created authorization profile for download ACL. Next, we need to create policy for access point. I mentioned guest laptop. That's not correct for access point, which will use the about to authorization policies. So let us see how. So you come to policy sets. Basically, we are going to be using the one we created earlier called general access. It's of the type wired map. You click this arrow. So since this is a map, it is internal endpoints. Basically, it's reject, and drop. That's what you will give for authentication policy. Then you will expand on authorization policy. Basically, you will create a new rule called access point download ACL. You will select the downloadable ACL map identity group. So how exactly to do it is in the documentation. I'm kind of not going like line by line. Basically, you need to set the condition. You select the one that we created earlier called endpoint identity group. And then if you look here, we selected, basically you click here and select downloadable ACL, and then PicOS map Vlan will push Vlan 10, and then click save or submit. So that defines the policy, right? Then you will be configuring Vlan on the switch. So let me show you what I mean. So Vlan 10 will be pushed dynamically from ISE, but what we are doing here is creating the Vlan. So you have to create it, but assigning it to the port will be dynamically done. Let me fix the typo. So there we go. We created the Vlan 10, and it will be connected to port 25, right? Next, what we are going to do is look at we are going to verify once we connect it. So it's connected to port number 25 when I run it. So here we go. Like, this is the client map that starts with MAC address with F0. Authentication is map. Vlan 10 is dynamically assigned. So this is a downloadable filter instead of a dynamic filter, and this is the rule. So other thing we are going to do is check the downloadable filter. So this is the command to do it. Run show.1x downloadable filter. So what it is showing me is downloadable filters used in the interface 25. That's the port 25. Here is the MAC. So this is the rule and how many packets. This is the packet counter. So that is one verification command you can do. You can also do check VLAN, whether VLAN 10 is associated to port 25. So in here, you can see VLAN 10 is associated with port 25. So what we did is we verified different commands. This authentication and authorization went fine for access point. Now we are going to verify it in ISE. So let me go to the ISE. You go to operations log, and it kind of ends with here F0. So this is the access point. We push downloadable ACL and map VLAN profile. So click on the details. So it tells you which authorization profile is used, what is the result. You can look at full details at the very end. So VLAN 10 is pushed, and it used downloadable ACL called MAC3. So that concludes this session of the video.